All of my work focuses on human behavior to environmental change, so behavioral responses to environmental change. And although it has implications for all sorts of systems, I focus primarily in forest systems. So that's going to be what I'm talking about today. I didn't realize I was the only social scientist, so I switched my slides around just now to start with kind of the systems part. So I focus on temperate forest systems, and part of the reason is that they're in need of attention because many temperate forest systems are experiencing increasingly frequent and severe disturbances like wildfire. That's one that I focus on. Insect and disease outbreaks. These are disturbances that are driven by interactions between climate change, of course, which is occurring on large spatial scales and as a result of behaviors in the long past, as well as current conditions, local conditions, which are themselves legacies of past human management behaviors and population growth and land uses. The interesting things about wildfire and insect and disease outbreaks is that these disturbances are really interdependent across time and space. Both travel or spread through contiguous vegetation. And so what one landowner does to reduce the risk of one of these disturbances in ownership has bearing on what others can do. And then in terms of space, I've already described how they're interdependent. The current threats are dependent on the past. And because of these cross-scale interdependencies, collaboration among managers is really important, both on large spatial extents, but also across time, planning into the far future. But this is really challenging because humans, especially individuals, don't usually think on and act on large spatial and temporal scales. We usually respond to environmental cues that are evident on small scales and in the very near-term sense. And so these present some really juicy questions about how people can manage and conserve and restore ecosystems by working at the scales in which the ecological disturbances function. So, building on that, here's a hierarchy of my research questions. They're kind of nested. I'm presenting them in a different order than Karen did. But so my overarching question is, what enables and motivates people to respond to environmental change in ways that not only protect ecosystems, but also enhance human welfare? And this is really the process of adaptation. Behavioral adjustments in human communities in response to changes in the environment over the long term that increases human suitability to the environment and as well as reduces vulnerability to the environment. So more specifically, I'm interested in what motivates land managers to respond to local hazards and risks, especially those that are driven by climate change and interactions between climate change and local conditions, to respond to these local hazards and risks in forests through strategies that really exhibit adaptation. So through collective action, in anticipation of future change, at large spatial, temporal, and organizational scales, and with the goal of transitioning to new conditions. So these are the questions that drive my research. In terms of methods, I use kind of three main processes: engaging stakeholders to identify research questions and interpret results, qualitative analysis of individual and focus group interviews to identify and understand variables and think about potential relationships among them, and then quantitative analysis of survey data to explain those relationships and to test hypotheses. And of course, all of these interact because with the stakeholders, I interpret the results of these processes. And then finally, here are my courses. Both topics on vulnerability and adaptation, as well as methods for data collection and analysis. Thank you very much.